I want to thank Professor Rebecca Williams for all her guidance and hard work she put into helping Professor Wager and I putting this together. I always say she's kind of like the manager, and we're the ball players, just reading the signs and making sure we're where we need to be. It was her idea. She came up with this last year, this whole Humanities conference. Last year it was about the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, and it was a great success. And she asked me to do it last year, and I said yes without even thinking about it, as I usually do. And then I realized, I'm an English person. What am I going to write about? But I figured it out. She helped me, and I'm really glad she did, and I'm glad to be a part of it. What we want to do with this conference is have this be a place to be every year, this Humanities Conference. This year we have people from schools in the area, NJIT, we have full-time professors here at Essex, a few adjuncts, and we want to keep casting a wider net. We want to eventually have people from colleges in New York City, other parts of Jersey, and then someday the country, that this yearly conference and program becomes something people want to be at, here at Essex County College. This year we're going to focus on modernism, everything from literature, art, music, theater, media, architecture, and design. I hope you enjoy what we set up for the next 2 days. Again, we have today and tomorrow. And that you get to see all that we have to offer here at Essex and from the Humanities Department. So enjoy, and thank you again for being here. One last note, if you want to recycle your programs, just leave them on the table out front for other people to use. This way we don't, create more trash than we have to. I want to introduce Dr. Berry, say a few words, president of CCHA and history professor here at Essex, so let's give him a hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's a delight to see you all and a pleasure to be here. Community College Humanities Association was founded in 1979 in New Jersey. It moved briefly to Philadelphia, Community College of Philadelphia, and then with the encouragement of Dr. A. Zachary Yamba, we brought CCHA here to Essex County College. Community College Humanities Association is a national organization headquartered here at the college. We're very grateful to the college for its support. We serve 1,100 community colleges nationally and somewhere between 25 and 30,000 full-time and part-time faculty in the humanities. CCHA has a strong national presence. We're an affiliate of the American Association of Community Colleges. We're an affiliate of the American Council of Learned Societies and many other learned societies as well. The humanities is a strange term. You don't go to kindergarten and study the humanities. But when you get to college, suddenly the term is used. And it's used because it encompasses those essential areas of learning that we've all been experiencing from kindergarten on, in fact, earlier than that, I'm sure. The humanities provide opportunity for all Americans. They provide the basic component of education for lifelong learning. The disciplines instill habits of the heart and habits and skills related to reading, writing, critical thinking, and effective communication. The humanities teach essential information about the world and global understanding and the importance of our position globally. The humanities foster innovation. I think the catchword here is creativity. The humanities foster creativity. It was Steve Jobs who said one of the key components to the success of his company was his exposure to the humanities. The humanities ensure productive global engagement. We see this in all our courses here. We see it in literature, in philosophy, in history, in the study of religion, in arts, in art history, and music. And finally, the humanities strengthen civic knowledge and practice. We encourage the study and the practice of diverse communities, the cultivation and exchange of knowledge about our culture and the cultures of the world. And so the humanities are essential to our education here at Essex County College, a vibrant and important division. We appreciate all of your hard work, especially that of the faculty. Please, a big hand for the faculty in the humanities and those who organized this conference. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Professor Wager, and we want to again welcome you to the second annual Humanities Division Conference, the first one of which was led and conceived by Professor Rebecca Williams last year, as Professor O'Connell mentioned. And this is something we really want to do every year, have a conference in the humanities bringing together artists, writers, musicians, architects, designers, filmmakers, to talk about the importance of the humanities and focus on a different theme each year. This year we look at modernisms and its various iterations and interpretations. We have a great and very full conference schedule, which you can see in your program. If you didn't get one, you can get one outside, but again, please, recycle them. We're trying to be green. But you can see that we have a full day today, and especially tomorrow. We'll begin today with an inspiring and amazing concert by our own Professor Alston, Director of the Performing Arts Programs at ECC, and you are really in for a treat in a few minutes to hear him. This will be followed by 2 panel discussions. Then on Thursday, we'll have a full day beginning at 10 a.m. with discussions, media screenings, and culminating in a special poetic tribute at 7 p.m. to the work of the late, great poet and activist, Newark's own Mary Baraka. So that will be tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. As Lorraine Hansberry once wrote, all art is ultimately social, that which agitates and that which prepares the mind for slumber. So I ask us to let us as artists and scholars create art and think about art that doesn't put people to sleep, but wakes us up. Let's remember the spirit of the best of the modernist artists and writers. The great art often comes from the heretics, the outcasts, the radicals, the revolutionaries, the troublemakers, the people who delight in shaking things up. So on that note, I would like to introduce the Acting Chair of Humanities, Eileen DeFries, Dr. DeFries, who will say a few words, and we have just a special thank you to Dr. DeFries, who is doing an amazing job as acting chair. And we also want to thank Professor Longmore in particular for her many years of service as chair of the Humanities Division. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Eileen DeFries, and I'm in Humanities. I just want to say that I'm very, very happy and very proud of Jennifer Wager and Sean O'Connell, and also Rebecca Williams, because she was the one running back and forth to the print shop, trying to get this wonderful, excellent program published. And also, I'd like to thank everyone who was involved in the production of this most important Humanities Week. A lot of times our students forget that we do more than just complain about lateness and absences from class, but we do scholarship here. We have many, many academic scholars on our faculty here in Humanities. That's full-time and adjunct. And if you come today and tomorrow, you will experience something truly wonderful, okay? But we are also about music. I was telling someone today, you must bring your class to this conference this morning because you will have an experience you will not soon forget, one that is very special. Professor Richard Alston, who most of the time you'd have to pay expensive tickets to see him perform, and now you get to experience him basically for free. So please enjoy the conference and the performance by Professor Alston. Now I would like to introduce the Dean of Liberal Arts, Dr. Steplight Johnson. She has been truly an inspiration for all of us in the humanities. She is our cheerleader. She supports everything we do in terms of academics, and programs. So I would like for you to meet her and introduce her, Dr. Steplight Johnson. Please give her a hand.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the Division of Humanities Conference, Vortices from Modernism to Mid-Century. I acknowledge and thank the Division of Humanities faculty and staff for their vision, their scholarship, and their hard work to make this conference possible under the current leadership of Dr. Eileen DeFries, who is acting chair, and also acknowledging the work of Professor Longmore, who was the acting chair over the past couple of years as this conference was held last year and as this current conference was planned and implemented. And I would also like to recognize the conference co-chairs, Professor Sean O'Connell and Jennifer Wager. In addition, I thank Professor Rebecca Williams for her publicity communications. When I saw the conference program with the stunning sketch of the Colonnade apartment complex located in the Branchbrook Park area, I reflected on the people shown in the graphic. And that picture is actually shown in the upper right-hand corner of your cover of your program. And I imagined how proud and pleased they looked to be able to live in a modern apartment complex such as the Colonnade. I immediately forwarded the program to my colleagues, and one who is an architect emailed me back and said, I could never get over the fact that the Colonnade in downtown Newark was a Miles Vanderohe building. So of course, I had to go back and take another look at the image and see that yes, indeed, the text under the image on the poster states the Colonnade, Newark, New Jersey, 1958, designed by Mies Vanderohe. I learned that Mies Vanderohe was a German-American architect born in Germany in 1886, and he was considered, quote, the leading and most influential exponent of the refined glass and steel architecture of the mid-20th century. He passed in 1969 in Chicago. So we know that the Colonnade apartment complex is one of our buildings located in Newark, New Jersey, that is a reflection of international architectural greatness and history. To me, the Colonnade symbolizes what modernism should mean to us today. Big, massive, bold, with clear lines, with glass panes that reflect what is in the surroundings so that everyone can see, everyone can comprehend, and everyone can react. So as we sit through the sessions of this conference, let us ask ourselves, what do we see for ourselves in Newark, New Jersey? What do we comprehend for ourselves in Newark, New Jersey? What reflections do we see in our surroundings? How are we using that information to improve ourselves, our groups, our college, and our society? Thank you for being here and enjoy the conference.
Okay, we're going to have our first performance right now by Professor Richard Alston. He's a native of East Orange, New Jersey. Richard Alston is a masterful pianist, having appeared as a soloist in recitals with orchestras throughout the United States and Europe. He received his Bachelor of Music degree from the Juilliard of Music in New York City, where he studied with Erwin Frunlich and Joseph Raef. He was later awarded the highly prestigious Maria Guerrera Jodelson Scholarship in Piano, and returned to Juilliard for his master's degree as well. Under the direction of Professor Alston, a respectable associate degree music program at Essex County College in New Jersey has flourished into a full-fledged performing arts department of music, dance, and drama. Professor Alston is a recipient of several awards, among them the Award for Excellence from the New Jersey Education Association, the Community Leaders Fostering Change in Education Award from the New Jersey Unit of the National Association of Negro Business and Women's Clubs, and Musician of the Year by the National Association of Negro Musicians Incorporated, Newark, New Jersey chapter. Professor Alston is currently the host and producer of the cable television show Performing Arts Showcase at Essex County College. The show features instrumentalists and vocalists from New York/New Jersey metropolitan area. So please welcome Professor Alston as he performs Classically Black.
Before I begin, I want to ask you to do a favor for me, and would you please silence all cell phones for me? I'd appreciate that. I want to thank my colleagues for presenting this conference. I especially want to thank Professor Rebecca Williams for inviting me to perform Classically Black here at Essex County College. I performed this at several universities and colleges throughout the country, and it really feels good to bring it home. I want to share with you the inspiration behind this lecture concert. I play music by Chopin, by Liszt, Schumann, Bach, and so this concert lecture is highlighting composers of African descent. This needs to be done because most people, when you think of music performed by African Americans and written by African Americans, you think about R&B, you think about jazz, you think about gospel music, but classical African American or composers of African descent go way back to the time of Mozart. Now, my first introduction to music like this began when I was about 8 years old. I studied with a local piano teacher in East Orange, New Jersey. I don't know if any of you are studying piano, but there's a series called the John Thompson Piano Method. And in book 2 of John Thompson's Piano Method, there is this selection. That selection is called Carry Me Back to Old Virginia. But what's important about that is when I was given this piece to learn as an 8-year-old, I was already playing Bach minuets, Clementi sonatinas, and when my teacher assigned this piece, she said, "This is by a black man." James Bland wrote Carry Me Back to Old Virginia. When I do this concert around the country, I usually ask the audience, do they know who wrote it? And everybody says Stephen Foster. Stephen Foster did not write this. So what's important was alongside of my music by Bach, by Mozart, by Chopin, here was a composition by a composer that looked like me. And I encourage students, whenever I meet them and do the lecture, to know the music of your people. If you're Latino, you should not just know the pop composers and singers that are Latino, but you should know all you can. So that was the first inspiration. The second inspiration came when I got my first teaching position down the street at Rutgers University right here in Newark. I was teaching music appreciation. And every now and then when I taught music appreciation, I might play something by Scott Joplin, or I might mention the name Duke Ellington, and people looked at me like, who's that? And so I was asked by the chairperson, could I design a course for Rutgers that would showcase, highlight composers of African descent that compose classical music. Back then, the music appreciation books were not including anything by a composer that was of African descent. Now, years later, things have changed. So I created that course for Rutgers. When I came here at Essex, I was very happy to see that there was a course offered called Black Contributions in Music. Now, what's interesting about this course, it's offered even this semester, and I think it'll be offered in the fall, is that we have 6 or more sections of Music 100. The music of Bach, the music of Mozart, 6 sections with 30 students in each section. The Black contribution, 1 section, maybe 15 students, maybe. this also fulfills the humanities requirement. So what I do is I'm encouraging you is I have nothing against Mozart and Bach and Beethoven. I play them. But if you're of African descent, you really should discover what were the origins of the spiritual. How did gospel come to be? All right? What classical composers are there in addition to what I'm going to speak today? And there's a book in the bookstore I recommend you to get called The Music of Black Americans by Eileen Southern, because she covers everything in this book from African music to African instruments to spirituals to gospel music to jazz to Black Broadway shows. So I can't do this lecture. I have to stay within a certain amount of time, but I encourage you to get that book downstairs. The first selection I want to perform for you is a piano transcription of the spiritual Wade in the Water. I first was introduced to this piece when I heard another pianist play it. And I heard this other pianist play it. She played it very, very well, but I had to play it. It really got to me. And I also felt that there was more to the music than she was bringing out when she played it. So I learned it. The title of the piece is called Troubled Waters. Now, singers have lyrics to help you interpret the song, to help you bring the song across. Instrumentalists like myself, pianists, we don't have lyrics. But there are words to this spiritual. Now, many of you know of the spiritual Wade in the Water as being sung during the baptism in a church service. But I was trying to understand why Margaret Bond did not call it Transcription on Wade in the Water, why she called it Troubled Waters. Now, what I'm about to tell you is my interpretation. This is how I came to understand why she calls it Troubled Water. Many spirituals had a double meaning. They had the obvious meaning that the master of the plantation knew, in this case, the Wade in the Water, be baptized. But then there was a coded meaning. And the coded meaning, only the slaves knew. And so this coded meaning meant if you were a slave and you were going to try to seek freedom, to escape the plantation, at some point in your journey, you must get into the water. Why? Because dogs were going to be sent to track you down. If you got into the water, the dogs would lose the scent, and they couldn't find you. So I felt this. Once that slave got into the water, all of the trials, tribulations, all the hardships, all the violence they had to endure got into that water with them. And so even if that water was as calm as could be before they got in, once they got in, that water was changed and became troubled. even though this conference is modernism, I'm going to take you back. There was a composer by the name of Chevalier de Saint-Georges. He was a Frenchman, and he didn't start off as a composer. He actually started off as a world-class fencer. His mother was from Africa, but his father was the governor of the island. He was a white man. So he was a mulatto, Chevalier de Saint-Georges, but he was dark complexion, so everybody knew that this man had African heritage, African blood in him. And he composed symphonies, he composed concertos, he lived in the time of Mozart, and some even speculate that Mozart did meet him, even though Mozart was much younger than him. But he even later ran an opera company that was to become the Paris Opera. And here is a piece that he wrote, originally for the harpsichord. I'm going to play on the piano, naturally, but it's called Adagio in F minor. The word adagio is an Italian term that refers to playing the music very calmly and very slowly. There was a movie, I'm a big movie buff, I want to thank my students for coming this morning. There was a movie called Rain Man. And Rain Man was about an individual, a man, who was a savant. A savant is a person that even though they may have learning difficulties or comprehension difficulties of some things, they possess a talent or a skill that overshadows that. For example, my mother was a nurse, and she spoke about, or told me about, that there was a patient in this hospital, and he would spend a lot of time drawing. And they didn't think much of it until one day they noticed him looking out the window, and he was drawing the building that was across from the building he was in. There was one thing about his drawing, though. He was drawing this brick building brick by brick. So here we have a composer, Blind Tom, who any music he heard, he could play it on the piano. The master of the plantation allowed him to come into the big house, so to speak, and he played the piano there. And anything he heard, he could play it. He was so magnificent at this that people wanted to hear him. So the master of the plantation took him not just across that southern state or several southern states, he took him all across the country, even to the White House. Blind Tom performed. When there was the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the slaves, the master of the plantation decided he asked Blind Tom's parents for custody. And they signed over custody to him, thus allowing him to continue to take Blind Tom all throughout the country here and make money off of Blind Tom. Here is Blind Tom's Waltz Bassa Tuba. Another movie, The Entertainer. I don't know if any of you remember that. Not The Entertainer. That was the song that became famous from that. What was the movie? Now all of a sudden the name escapes me. The Sting. Thank you. Thank you. This next composer became famous because of The Sting, that movie. In The Sting, they played this piece. That is. Scott Joplin wrote many compositions that are called rags. And I sent out to my colleagues here at Essex County College a little quiz. And in the quiz, I asked them, do they know why it is called a rag? And someone wrote me back and said, oh, because it's ragtime. It was played in ragtime. Well, no, ragtime would not exist if there weren't rags. So it's called a rag because the piece uses what is called syncopation. Syncopation, I'm not going to ask my music students to define it. I'm going to just tell. Syncopation is when you accent a beat that is normally not accented. If we take the time of 4/4 or the meter of 4, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But if I take that first accent and put it on 2, 3, or 4 like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, then it becomes syncopated. Syncopation is when you take the accent and put it on a beat that is normally not accented. So when Scott Joplin wrote his rags, they were called that because people felt the rhythm became ragged. And that is why this piece is called the Maple Leaf Rag. A number of years ago, I met a woman. She was doing a lecture about her father. Her father was the composer William Grant Still, who's referred to as the dean of African American composers. And she was telling stories about him and his life of composing music. And he wrote symphonies, he wrote compositions for piano, but he was not accepted by the other major classical composers of the time who were European. And this went as far as, she told the story, that there was going to be this portrait done, and it was going to feature some of the great composers, classical composers of his time, Igor Stravinsky, Aaron Copland, to name a few. And what happened was these composers schemed and decided that they were going to stand in front of him so that he would not really be seen in the portrait. And so what happened, great composer Igor Stravinsky was not going to go along with this. And he was very, very highly regarded. Stravinsky wrote a wonderful piece called The Rite of Spring. And so what Stravinsky did was, when it became time, and I say portrait, not a painting, but a photo. When it became time for the photo to be taken, moments before it was taken, Stravinsky took William Grant Still by the arm and pulled him next to him in front of the other composers. And that is why William Grant Still's picture is included and he's not behind. This is the final movement from a suite he wrote called A Deserted Plantation. Next, there's an English composer, Samuel Coleridge Taylor. He actually was very influential to the Czech composer Dvorak. And Dvorak wrote a wonderful symphony called the New World Symphony, and in the movement, third movement of that, he actually includes a spiritual. But Samuel Coleridge Taylor came to this country, was very, very highly regarded. And this is the last movement of his suite called Petite Suite de Consort. I have a question for you. Who wrote the song Take the A Train? Anybody out there know? Who said that? You gave it away. Most people say Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington and his band, his orchestra, made the song famous, but it was actually composed by a man named Billy Strayhorn. That's who wrote Take the A Train. Let me tell you a little bit about Billy Strayhorn. Billy Strayhorn loved the piano. His first dream was to become a concert pianist. When he was in high school, they had musicals. Billy Strayhorn wrote all the music for these musicals. And when he was 15, he wrote this composition that I'm going to play for you now called Valse. But before I play Valse, I want to tell you something about Take the A Train. When he was to meet Duke Ellington for the first time, he called Duke Ellington and said, okay, how do I get to you? How do I come to your place? And Duke Ellington said, take the A Train. He wrote this composition, Take the A Train, yet he felt it wasn't that great of a piece of music. So he actually threw it away. A friend of his took it out of the trash and said, no, I believe this is a great piece of music. And so, no, you're not going to throw it away. And so as history went, he did take it to Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington loved it. And I think that's one of Duke Ellington's compositions that he's most known for. This is a valse that Billy Strayhorn wrote when he was 15 years old. The first composition I played for you, Troubled Waters, has a lot in common with this composition. First of all, my music theory students should note that the first composition was in the key of E minor, and so is this in the key of E minor. The first composition was based upon a spiritual wade in the water. This composition is based upon the spiritual sinner. Please don't let this harvest pass. And the final thing they have in common is Margaret Bonds was the star pupil of Florence Price. This is Florence Price's Fantasy Negra. For my final composition, I want to play a composition that's not listed on the program. This piece is based upon a gospel song, and it's written in a very virtuoso classical style. The composer is a man named Andre Crouch. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but this composition is based upon his song titled My Tribute. I want to thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoyed this. I thank you for coming today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Professor Alston. Again,